A very wonderful moment, Team Zimbabwe, and welcome to Africa and Beyond Television Network. And we are back with another view of things in the nation of Zimbabwe. Comrade Set Free has raised something which is very important, and we need to take a look onto his submissions. So he says that this 2030 agenda is not yet over. And he claims that Emerson Mnangagwa was just testing waters to see if the journey is walkable. So we need also to understand that he claims that the party was behind him. So although they were not all of them, but he says that the party was behind him to enable him to have a third term if we want to. So these are the issues we are going to look upon. So he says that there were phases. Phase one was test the waters, and this is what he did. The second phase, he says that we have 3 years before 2028. So the 2030 mantra will continue in ZANU PF despite ED rejecting the idea. Owen Muda would never say anything that is not backed by ED. He is his boy and will always lead with the behind the scenes ED message. When Muda speaks, ED has spoken. So this is a very important point which he has raised right here, and which is worth consideration. And I agree with him to some extent that when you see these people doing whatever they're doing, they're not doing it in vain, because if they were against Mnangagwa, they would have been stopped by now. And number 3, he speaks about the revival, or the 2030 revival. This is the phase 3. So as we continue to move forward, you'll see growing concerns about the 2030 agenda, and that would then result to the extension of terms. So it won't be an issue of Mnangagwa running a third term. It will be an issue of Mnangagwa extending his current term to 2030. So I have seen a lot of arguments that this is not going to happen because it will need a referendum. I don't think that to extend a term from now to 2030, it will need a much complicated referendum. Yes, it's quite better to extend to 2030 than to run for another term to 2033. This is my own view. So for to extend to 2030, you just need one referendum, because Mnangagwa remains president. If there is a need of a referendum, it will be a once-off referendum. It's different to Mnangagwa running another term. So that is our first point. So what is going to happen is that they will simply amend the constitution and say this current term will run from now up to 2030. And from 2030 going forward, you have you have unlimited terms, unlimited 7-year terms. That will be the amendment. And it will go through the referendum. If it is accepted by the referendum or by the people, then it becomes law. And Mnangagwa anenge ari president amuva an election forward, which means hapana any other provision inenge ichiita kuti akole any other election in between, which means the next election cycle inenge iri pana 2030. So you would have benefited. And if he removes term limits, then zvakureva kuti he will be busy those 2 years to push for his son to get into power up to infinity. And also vanenge vachipusha nyaya dzavo dzeumambo kuti dzinge dzichiuya, so that they remain in charge and in power for a very long time, which makes sense. So this is what Comrade Set Free is raised right here. And it's very important to note that you can never have Mnangagwa back down on whatever he is planning. So Farai talks about 2 referendums. I think I have answered that. Mnangagwa does not need 2 referendums to extend up to 2030. He need 2 referendums if they want to extend the term of limit and they want him to contest in 2028. But kana tisina election ya 2028, he doesn't need 2 referendums. You need one if there is any referendum to talk about. So that is what is very important. And remember, that term yavanenge vachiextenda to 2030, vari kuextendera including MPs and everyone else who participated in the elections and won. So everybody will be the beneficiary techikondinya nemaby elections as usual. So that is a very valid issue. Tendai Manyange says panodwa referendum for these changes to take effect. Remember, ZANU PF lost another referendum that was spearheaded by the likes of Johnson. He won't win this because most in ZANU are against it. It's just him and his paid hangers on who are in favor of it. So looking at this point, it's very difficult to tell if you win it or not. The key determinant and the key decider will be Advocate Nelson Chamisa. Advocate Nelson Chamisa, if he chooses to fight that referendum, and if you add the numbers within ZANU PF and within the opposition, there is likelihood that it will fail. But if President Nelson Chamisa does not put a fight to stop that and say, it will be very, very difficult for this team then within ZANU PF to stop it on their own. They won't be able to do so. So it depends on what President Nelson Chamisa, as the opposition leader, decides to do. And it depends on the benefits to him as an opposition leader. So sometimes there are battles and there are fights you might choose not to fight for certain reasons. So that is one of the most important issues right there. And also, someone asks and say, Anze, why is everyone, including opposition, focused and obsessed with ED's next move? We are not obsessed with ED's next move. Zimbabwe is one. And what ZANU PF does affects everyone. Mukaita hondo munyika, haiuye ichisarudzwa kuti wori wekwachamisa here, wori weZANU PF here, munongofa. As long as that is war, you will die. Women will be raped. Children will be, affected in terms of their education, in terms of everything, their protection. You start to see children being forced into a war. So when we are dealing with things, you don't do things which ZANU PF. No, we need to make sure that we defend the positions, not we are a country and elections come and go, but isisu tinoramba tiripo. So everything which happens within ZANU PF affects everyone. They are the policy makers at this point in time, which means any action from them affects everyone. So Droid explains something we have been talking about. It says third term means it will run from 2028 to 2033. Extending presidential term to 2030 is not the same as having a third term. In this case, it doesn't necessarily require referendums, but something like a state of emergency under presidential powers. Okay, I don't think there is need for a state of emergency. It will be just an amendment of the constitution. And it's not likely going to call for a referendum. Look at what happened to Kunana Chief Justice Malaba. That is what they did. And vakatopedza vakadaro. There is nothing which is going to stop these people to do whatever they want. So one of the most important issues is to note that this matter was placed under the resolutions. The resolutions were adopted. One key thing we need to note is that resolutions were adopted. Motions were moved by the Harare chairperson of ZANU PF, were supported or seconded by the Bulawayo chairperson of that province. What it means is they adopted that Mnangagwa goes to 2030. So judging everything by what Mnangagwa says does not matter. What matters is these resolutions were adopted by a full ZANU PF conference. And once they are adopted, what it means is they are now legally binding within ZANU PF. So they will be pursuing 2030 agenda, notwithstanding anything else. So this is what is happening at this point in time, and I find this argument very important and quite interesting. I do not know your views, guys, your thoughts regarding all this, but I think we've tried by all means possible to deal with this question from Comrade Set Free. Time will tell. We'll be seeing what is going to happen next. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming.